Hello, I'm the Dark Master, and welcome back to the Kirby Right Back at You Retrospective. And in today's installment of the Retrospective, we shall be covering episode 62, Mabel Turns the Table, or as it's known in Japan, It's Only Fortune Telling. Nevertheless, Fortune Telling. This episode was originally released in Japan on December 21st, 2002, as the 62nd episode, while the English dub was not released until February 21st, 2004, still as the 62nd episode. This episode would be the second to have Mabel the Fortune Teller as a main character, but without further ado, let us start with the episode's plot. The episode opens to a shot in the family room of Tiff Tough Ladylike Cerebrum and Kirby watching Channel Dedede, and right off the bat we see the first change between versions. In the Japanese original, there is a set of text that reads, Great King Dedede's Brunch, with an icon of the king's face in place of the words King Dedede. Sadly, the English dub for some reason saw fit to airbrush the text off, despite it being perfectly fine English, which is kinda unusual, frankly. Regardless, in both versions, Escargoon announces that they will not be showing their standard programming, as they have a new show. We then see the family discuss for a bit what this new program will be. Tough hopes it might involve robots. His mother suggests that he could be starting a new talk show, to which Tiff bemoans that she hopes that they don't just talk about the king again. Speaking of the king, he introduces the new show with his usual vermilitude, as we see Escargoon introduce What's My Fortune, hosted by none other than Mabel. She greets the audience and admits that she had no idea that she had a show. Afterwards, Escargoon causes the show to start as Mabel waves her hands around her blue crystal ball as we see a set of pictures are projected onto a screen, including a star, clouds, candy, a ring, flower, and a house. It is also here that we see the next change between versions. In the Japanese original, they're just on a white background. The English dub gives all of them a pink background except for the clouds, which is honestly one of the rare times that 4Kids made a visual change that was actually an improvement, as they stick out better thanks to this background. Escargoon and the king explain how the watchers should pick the first image they think of. Cerebrum picks the cloud, Ladylike picks the ring, Tough picks the candy, while Tiff picks the flower, and Kirby just watches confused. Meanwhile, after a period of time, Dedede then says someone's about to get some rotten luck, as Mabel declares that those who pick the clowns should be worried that something will fall down on their head. The king mockingly suggests those who pick the cloud should buy a helmet. Sir Ibram is a bit offended while his wife says it looked dapper. They laugh, but while Kirby is trying to eat some yogurt, he accidentally causes the spoon to fly into the air and hit the father right on the head. The two formerly skeptical parents start believing Mabel's powers, while Tiff asks if they really take this mumbo jumbo seriously. Her brother says that adults will believe everything, while Tiff wonders if there really is some truth behind these fortunes. As we cut back to Kirby, who is frankly just happy to be here, as we then go to the jazzy intro. After the jazzy intro, We cut to Capitan as we see Mayor Len Blustergas, Chief Bookums, and Melvin the Mailman discuss the recent broadcast. Melman says that Bookums made the right decision picking the star, to which Bookums says that if he had gotten the cloud, he would have gotten hit on the head, which the mayor supports, saying he got hit in the head. It is here that we see the next change between versions. In the Japanese original, he claims to have been hit in the head by a roof tile, which, ooh, that's painful. The English dub changes to him getting hit in the head with a crab apple. Both versions are perfectly fine, as they are both being objects that would cause at least a little bit of harm. The mayor takes off his hat, revealing he has a grotesque bump. In the Japanese original, we then see a short scene of Honey's mom and Spikehead's mother discussing the recent events with the mayor. Honey's mother asks her if she heard that the mayor's fortune came true, while Spikehead's mother dismisses it as just being a pure coincidence. Honestly, it's a shame that 4Kids saw fit to remove this scene, as it just further enhances the growing paranoia of the town to some extent. And I don't know why they removed it. Likely had something to do with time restraints. We then see in both versions a scene of Kawasaki, Gus, the gas station owner, and Gengu, the toy store owner, discussing recent events. Here we see the next change between versions. In the Japanese original, the lantern in the background bears a kanji symbol. 4Kids, for some reason, saw fit to remove it. It's just another weird instance of censorship that 4Kids saw fit to do to really any overtly Japanese piece of culture. It's kind of weird. Resuming with the plot, Gus says he thinks that it's all hooey, while Gengu points out how Mabel predicted Kawasaki would have a great restaurant. Kawasaki laughs, saying people would be able to tell the difference between old meat and new meat, which causes the two to get grossed out. We see the camera pan over to the window as we see Tough, Spikehead, Honey, Iroh, and Kirby watching the adults discuss it. Honey wonders why they are so fascinated with predictions, and Tough explains it's because all adults are superstitious. Spikehead is a bit confused by the word, and Tough explains that they have faith in bogus things. Iroh asks if he means stuff like the Mabel show. Tough then proposes, with some clever thinking, that they make the predictions come true. Spikehead questions how they do that, and Tough explains that his plan is by prosing that if Mabel predicts something would fall on your head, and then he, tosses a stone that lightly falls on Iroh's head, and the group understand his plan, with Spikehead saying that this will be fun, and they get excited as we then see the man Samo, the friendly bartender, was listening in on the kids and takes them to the bar, giving them some orange soda and some really delicious looking strawberry shortcake. Tough asks why he is doing this, and Samo the bartender explains that he wants them to do these pranks to make the predictions that Mabel makes come true. Most are excited, but Honey worries about getting caught. Samo assures her that he will handle any issues that they get into, and all they have to do is make the predictions come true. Honey asks why he's so invested in helping Maple, and he awkwardly answers, implying that he loves her and is also trying to dismiss the inquiry in the first place. We then cut to Professor Curio's museum as we see him watching Mabel's show. We see a new set of cards similarly altered, including a rock, fish, some sort of seed, a ring, key, and star. He picks the rock, and we see Mabel predict that those that pick this rock should stay inside, lest something bad befall them, as King Dedede mocks those foolish enough to pick the rock. Professor Curio contemplates the warning and decides that since he has an archaeological dig today, he won't heed the warning, putting on his gear as Tough and the others watch. As he goes to leave, the group prepares the prank. Curio leaves the museum and slips on a banana peel. The Cappy Kids and Kirby push a barrel that causes him to fall onto it after slipping on the banana peel, and he's seen rolling down the street. The kids cheer as he is seen eventually colliding with the mayor, who swerves to avoid the poor guy, only to send him flying right back into the museum, destroying tons of precious artifacts and leaving him severely injured. We cut to Dr. Yabui's office as we see the mayor took Curio there after recognizing the accident. Yabui says it was a close call as he is in an entire body cast. The mayor says he picked the stone and is horrified. Professor Curio moans that he wished he had listened to Mabel. We then cut to the police station as we see the kids watching Chief Bookham's watching Mabel show, like a lazy reaction streamer, except even more transformative. It is here that we see the next change between versions. In the Japanese original, we see that one of the cards bears a wine bottle and glass that four kids seeking to remove any references to illicit material alter to remove the liquid. Just another instance of silly moralism of conservative parent groups at the time. Honestly, I don't see the issue necessarily with showing kids that stuff. I mean, they're gonna see it anyway. And besides, if you're a responsible parent, it wouldn't matter what you show your kids because you would pay attention to them and make sure they don't drink it or tell them that why it's bad to drink it. So, uh, the remaining cards are unaltered, which include a pen, fish, key, dove, and apple. Bookums hesitates as we see the next change between versions. In the Japanese original, he says wine before deciding on the keys. The English dub changed this to him originally choosing the fish before going for the key. This was likely, again, to remove any references to illicit material. Mabel then predicts those who picked the key beware, as they will make a grave mistake. Bookums laughs, saying he'd never make any sort of mistake like that, as he turns around and see that the jail had been left open. In reality, Tuff had taken the keys while he was watching the show and released Doron the thief. Freaking out, Bookums decides to chase after the malicious ne'er-do-well. We then see afterwards as we have a newscast of Escargoon discussing Bookums being put in jail due to the incident. Bookums complains about how it's not his fault, and technically it isn't. Regardless, we cut to Kawasaki, who is watching the show, as we see the next change between versions. As in the background, there is a sign that bears a kanji on it in the Japanese original, and sadly, 4Kids English dub for some reason saw fit to airbrush it out. I guess it's just another instance of some unjustified, silly censorship because I guess they didn't really want Japanese culture in this show. I don't really get it, really. Kawasaki watches the Mabel show and we see a new set of cards. Strangely, a lot of people seem to say there is a change to the book, but I don't really see it. Regardless, Kawasaki picks the fish, and sadly, Mabel warns those who picked the fish that they shouldn't go to the ocean as there is danger there. Kawasaki, however, ignores the warning, and we see him going fishing at the ocean anyway. As Kawasaki casts his hook, Tuff attaches a knitted watermelon to the end of the hook, while the other kids hold Kirby back. The melon hits Kawasaki on the back of his, melon, which causes him to fall over the ledge into the ocean. Kirby, however, escapes, sucking up the melon and unintentionally saving the subpar chef. He enjoys the watermelon and spits up his hat. Meanwhile, it seems that Tiff happened to be watching this and finally realizes what exactly is going on. We cut to the next day as we see Kawasaki battered and bruised in an entire body cast, much to everyone's astonishment. We see Tuggle, the grocery store owner, Biblio, the bookkeeper, and Gengu, the toy store owner, discussing all the recent predictions. Buttercup mentions how strange it is, while Gengu says the mumbo jumbo must be true. Meanwhile, the bartender Samo listens in. We then cut the next day as we see Escargoon and Dedede walking down the hall, delighted that their scheme is working. Escargoon wonders if there is some way to exploit Mabel's newfound popularity, which the king says he has an idea, as Tuff and the others watch him from behind as they walk down the stairs. We see Mabel doing her thing as a new set of cards appear, including an apple book, which, unlike the previous instance, does have some minor color changes altered between versions that are just utterly confusing to me as they seem so insignificant, and I don't know why they would censor this. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. a pair of forks, a dove, and a jug. Escargoon picks the apple, which Mabel then warns those who picked the apple shall be struck down by lightning. The two goobers laugh at this. Due to being inside, there is literally no chance that they believe it could happen. But then we see Tuff instruct Kirby to sabotage the lights, which then fall down and electrocute the pair of confused ne'er-do-wells, live on television, which anyone sees. We see ladylike Cerebrum, the mayor, and his wife. Tuggle, Gengu, and Gus react to this. In the Japanese original, there is an additional scene of Bookums watching, which was strange that they removed it as there was nothing wrong with this scene, but it likely had to do with time constraints, if I'm being completely honest. We then cut to the king's bedroom as we see that it is revealed that he barely survived, and Escargoon declares his faith in Mabel. Tuff and the others laugh at the poor king's status. Tuff says how much fun this is as he and the others are at Samo's bar, and Samo says they're not done yet, as there's more to do. But then Tiff arrives to rain on everyone's parade and says Samo should be ashamed of himself at exploiting these kids to do his dirty work. We then cut outside on a little bridge over a little river as the others watch, and Samo explains that he wanted people to stop mocking Mabel and improve her reputation. He asks Tiff not to tell her this, as Tiff asks why he cares so much about Mabel, and he explains his love for her and wanted to have her wishes come true before telling Tiff not to tell her that either. The girl says to the friendly bartender that he should just be honest with her, as we then cut to Mabel talking with the group, who are reflecting off her crystal ball. She admits that she did have some suspicions given how unlikely it was for all her predictions to come true. The group apologized while Samuel accepts full blame on the event, but says maybe that in order to keep up her reputation and give the townsfolk a greater appreciation of her, they should continue it a bit longer. Tiff is appalled by this suggestion, but Mabel has a bit more positive view on the humorous suggestion. But from outside, we hear a large crowd that pauses the conversation. Mabel goes to investigate and sees a huge crowd has gathered outside, barely held back by Chief Bookums. Mabel and the others are shocked as Cerebrum and Ladylike comment on the neo riot that's going on. The mayor asks the pair if they intend to get their fortune read. Professor Kira says everyone should get their future told, and Kawasaki says he needs her to tell him when the health inspector shall come, much to the two parents' shock. Mabel closes the opening and is worried at all the fortunes that she's going to have to tell, and Tiff blames her brother for this whole thing. He, however, says that all they did was play a few pranks. The king, however, arrives in his limousine, driving like a maniac, and a legion of Waddle-Dees, led by Waddle-Doo, enter into the tent, and after a small skirmish, take Mabel off her feet, carrying her out. Dedede declares her to be his new prime minister. Sir Ibram asks if he's joking, while his wife says that her husband has that position already, but Escargoon says he's fired, while Dedede says sardonically that if he had Mabel's power, he would have predicted this. Mabel tries to dissuade the king, but the kidnapper takes her into his limousine and then drives off to the castle. Everyone is rather flummoxed, while Tiff wonders what he is up to, as he is using Mabel for something, surely. We cut to the next day as we see Mabel walking up to a sleeping Kirby, and uses a wooden toy of a helicopter to wake him up, and then says to him that he needs him for an idea she has. This is what we call foreshadowing in the business. We then cut to the next broadcast as Mabel is now decked in an entire mystic style outfit. She then really plays it up, saying all must listen to her. Escargoon then explains to the audience that they intend to ask Mabel policy questions. The king starts by asking her if it is okay for him to cut down the Wispy Woods to build a golf course. Mabel consults the ball and after a bit says yes, it would be all right. The king is enthused as we see Samo and the others watching the broadcast from the bar. Tiff is appalled by her statement, as is her brother. The king then asks on the subject of raising taxes, to which Mabel, after consulting the crystal ball, says that they may raise them as much as he wants. The king laughs. Excessive taxes truly are evil. Tiff reacts to this, and it's here that we see the next change between versions. In the Japanese original, Tiff complains that the king is trying to create a form of theocracy in Dreamland. Which, if you don't know what theocracy is, it's basically a government structure that involves a heavy presence of religion. For kids likely to avoid the wrath of easily offended Christian parents, saw fit to remove this, which is a shame and is yet another instance of stupid censorship that 4Kids did at the time. In the English dub, this is changed to her just saying that he can't do that. It's quite a bit more limp, and it's a shame that it had to be done at the time. Tuff asks why that is, and she explains the importance of democracy. Samo says something is wrong, as Mabel usually says nothing so foolish, and Mabel then says his tax policy and golf course won't matter, shocking the pair. Escargoon asks why, a bit confused, indeed he gets a little agitated, to which Mabel explains that to annoyed king, soon dreamland shall be no more, swallowed up by the sea. This astounds the king as Tiff watches skeptically. She then proclaims that all must follow her to safety. The king and Escargoon hesitate a bit, but Mabel seemingly takes offense at this and then reminds everyone of her last apocalyptic prediction, seen back in the two-parter episode 41 and 42, Prediction Predicament Part 1 and Part 2, which I've already reviewed, so check those out. 4Kids actually altered slash messed up the prediction, funnily enough, of those episodes and fixed it here retroactively, bringing it in line with the Japanese original. Normally I'd congratulate 4Kids for fixing an error they made, but that seems like pretty limp praise, to be completely honest. I mean, they did make the mistake in the first place, so yeah. After a brief recap of what happened in that episode, Mabel rightfully points out to the king that he was burned as she predicted, and the king just stands there horrified. We see the reaction of Gus, Tuggle, Gengu, Bookums, his wife, and Professor Curio, who are initially skeptical but believe Mabel after all the previous predictions have turned out to come true. Tiff is shocked at all this, while Samo says maybe she can predict the future, seemingly going into belief. Mabel then says those who don't follow her will face a great calamity alone. The king cries at the mistake he made going into the television business, and Mabel then takes her leave, followed by the king, Escargoon, as well as Cerebrum, Ladylike, Folo, and Falala. Ladylike wonders where her kids are, and Folo and Falala say that they will go find them. Strangely enough, it seems Waddle-Doo, the Waddle-Dees, Meta Knight, Sword Knight, and Blade Knight stay behind. And they basically serve as cameos, and I don't quite understand why. At the very least, Waddle-Doo and the Waddle-Dees don't go, as we've seen them migrate in the past for far less. I guess they kind of know what may or may not be going on, but spoilers. We see the group heading past the sheep fields as the crowd grows in size, as they make a trek down to the coast. We cut to see the town completely empty outside of Tiff, Tuff, the Cappy Kid, and Samo. Tuff says they are all following Mabel, and Volo and Falala appear and explain that their parents are worried about them being left behind. Tiff sardonically asks what they are going to do, and we then cut to Mabel and the crowds at the beach, and they really are a legion at this point. Chief Bookums and the mayor, Blustergas, ask Mabel what are they to do, and she explains that they shall cross the sea. We then see another change between versions. In the Japanese original, the camera pans over, showing the crowd's shocked reaction to her claim, before ending on Kawasaki, who asks how they shall pass the water without drowning. For some reason, 4Kids just cuts straight to Kawasaki. This was likely due to time restraint differences between versions. Mabel then taps the staff on the ground, and we see the waters part in what is a clear allusion to the biblical story of Exodus, in which Moses parted the Red Sea to save his people from the Egyptians. It is also here that we see the final change between versions. In the Japanese original, this scene has background music that is a remix of the arena theme from Kirby Superstar. Now, already sounds amazing, just in general, that theme. But here they do sort of a remix that gives it more of a sort of Middle Eastern, tribal, more biblical feeling. And really, it's very fitting. I think it greatly enhances this scene's impact and gravitas. Sadly, due to 4Kids' sheer incompetence, for some reason they did not get the rights to the music of the show, even though that usually comes with airing rights. I don't know, it's complicated. And as such, replace it with a far more boring and generic song that I can't even really describe. It's so boring. It's a real shame and just shows their incompetence. Resuming with the plot, the waters are parted via some sort of magic. The mayor's wife says it's a miracle, while Bookham's wife can't believe it, as other Cappies pledge to follow her. Tiff and the others finally arrive, and they are shocked at the whole scene. That horrid bird to Corey lambasts them for being late and asks if they have seen Kirby. Tiff, realizing Kirby is likely in danger, asks him when he last saw the baby, and unhelpfully, the little putrid bird says it was in the morning. Tiff is concerned, but this line of conversation ends as we see Mabel suddenly chastise the Cappies for their delusions, saying that she never thought that people would follow her to the coast. Everyone is a bit confused and shell-shocked as Tuggle asks her what is going on, as they followed her all the way here, as her previous predictions had all come true. She says that he's mistaken, and Samo says that she performed a miracle. She, however, tosses her staff, and the water returns to normal, as it's revealed to be the work of... Tornado Kirby. I've already discussed this ability in detail in 3 previous episode reviews where it appeared, specifically episode 16, A Fish Called Kine, episode 22, Island of the Lost Warrior, and episode 32, A Dental Dilemma. So check those out if you wish to learn more, but overall, Tornado, I think, made a great translation into the anime, and its usage in this episode was pretty neat. Resuming with the plot, everyone is amazed that it was all Kirby, and the mayor asks if they truly faked the whole thing. Mabel admits that she indeed lied with Kirby and hopes that now this can be a lesson that they won't put such blind faith in such foolishness, and says that she can't really predict the future, only help people help themselves with their problems, and is, like Samo has often said, just a counselor. She then explains that she should have never gone on that stupid show. Escargoon, a bit curmudgeonly, goes up to her and asks if this means their policy plans are bust. She makes a snide remark, and the king, in rage, raises his hammer to hit the poor woman, but Kirby shows him that that's not how you treat a lady. The two are blown away as people laugh at the duo of fools. Samo says to Mabel that he's happy people respect her now, and she says that she had a lot of help from Kirby, as we see the king and Escargoon being blown around via his power, and the episode ends with a happy Kirby leaping into the air surrounded by the Cappies. Now, however, let us discuss this episode's positives, this episode's negatives, and my final thoughts. Starting with the positives, I deeply appreciate this episode's usage of Mabel. She's probably one of my favorite Cappy Town residents, and her relationship with Samo is pretty relatable, while not being just a standard, relationship that the other couples have. Plus, it's also nice to see some continuity with Mabel's previous episodes that they reference, and they even try to retcon an issue that they made in a previous episode, which, while not an amazing thing, is neat to see the attempt, at least, given 4Kids' reputation. I also thought that this episode's overall plot and themes were very interesting. It has a message about the dangers of blind faith, which I think a lot of people can learn from. And it's not just televangelist types either. Anyone can easily manipulate you with enough, motivated reasoning. And we must be skeptical of all people, not just the religious, as well as those in power that would use religion to gain power. And this really shows that this show, despite the common stereotype, is not just a monster of the week and can have a perfectly fun story without one. Tornado Kirby was also neat to see again, and this episode is truly unique in their usage of a copy ability, as the only episode for Kirby to ever get an ability off screen, which is shocking and makes the twist a lot more stand out. Plus, it's heavily implied that Kirby got it via the toy that Mabel was playing with, so you can probably see where he got it from without being explicitly shown. As for negatives, this episode has a few. One that I don't quite consider valid is that a lot of people will point out how the whole plot is flawed because it was very lucky that only one person in the entire village picked the bad card, as otherwise the plan wouldn't work. But to that, I say a few things. Firstly, even if only one person picked the bad card, the fact that negative things happen to them is frankly enough for a rumor like this to start. I mean, look at all the various panics that have occurred throughout history. Usually, not everyone is impacted, but it just takes a certain number of people for such a rumor to spread. And I do think it's fairly realistic and reasonable for something like that to happen in Capitan. Frankly, far more substantive problems would be that I think that Mennonite just seemed to be slapped in with really no thought at all. I mean, honestly, you could have removed the scene where he was in and really nothing of value would have been lost. I just think it's very strange sometimes how this show will include him even if he does nothing. Even more significant to me, however, was the instances of censorship that seem in this episode particularly very petty and not really needed in any way. I don't know, like it's just so weird that you would remove alcohol from like a background object that you're not even going to see for long unless you're paying attention. Plus they have bar scenes, so clearly it's not something that they're opposed to completely. Overall, though, in terms of my final thoughts, I say that I think this episode is honestly pretty amazing. While it's not top 10, it's still really up there in terms of my ranking, and frankly, one well worth a watch. Even if you might not give it a good chance because it lacks a monster, I think it's well worth checking out if you're revisiting the series. Anyway, I'm the Dark Master. If you like this video, liked it, but if you love it, consider subscribing. And join me next time on the Kirby Right Back at Ya Retrospective. Have a nice day.